This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library
enough, you can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price that you can get Truefire All Access for.
I wanted to talk today about the Van Weelden Royal Overdrive because it's interesting to me for a few reasons. One of which is, like, in terms of Dumble pedals, like, this has got to be the Big Daddy, right? Probably the most expensive Dumble pedal thing out there. Peter Van Weelden has built Dumble clones, you know. Joe Bonamassa uses his cabs. Another thing that's interesting to me about it is that I think actually this is the pedal that I've struggled to get across most what is unique and interesting about it. So I'm always excited to try and actually get that across in a video. It's kind of tough. Somewhat similar, I guess, in a way to me to a lot of this Dumble stuff when, for instance, like the NAMM stuff with the Dumble booth where you were hearing players playing through them and you're thinking, is that what a Dumble sounds like? You know, at some points when I was watching the Robin Ford video, I was thinking, is that the Dumble tone? Like, there are lots of Dumble tones, right? So that's kind of what's interesting about it to me as well, as someone who's super fascinated in the Dumble thing. And then the other reason for me is that this represents the best trade that I ever did. So speaking of the best trade that I ever did, my good buddy Jake Loosemore, I was on eBay. I had a Strymon Iridium on eBay. This must have been in around sort of 2019, 2020, I presume. Prior to lockdown, but not much prior to it. I think 2019 was when I started doing demos in earnest a bit more. And anyway, I had this Iridium on eBay, had no interest in it. And I saw a message come through from someone who's like, do you want to trade this for a Strymon Iridium? Now, if you look at the prices of Strymon Iridium now, I think it looks like a pretty favourable trade. If you didn't know this already, but this would also be surprising to me for a few reasons looking back on it, because my buddy Jake Loosemore, a pretty vociferous analog type guy, like a real amp type of guy, up until very recently, and so the fact that he was willing to trade a Royal Overdrive for a digital piece of gear at the time was kind of fascinating to me. Well, it's now looking back. At the time, obviously, I was just like, yep, let's do it. So I traded a Royal Overdrive for for my Strymon Iridium. I don't know how long he kept that Strymon Iridium. I can't imagine it was for very long. I think nowadays he uses an FM3 when he has to go direct. And also he quite likes some of the Universal Audio stuff as well. But anyway, what is cool about this pedal is that if you're looking for that kind of Dumble channel in a pedal thing, I think this does it pretty much as full-throatedly, to say something gross, as anything else out there. So you've got a master volume, you've got a presence, you've got bass, you've got middle and treble, so you've got a full tone stack and you've got gain. The thing that's a little bit confusing about this pedal, but essentially you've got mode A and B and you've got a bright switch 1, 2, 3, and the idea is that this works essentially with most amps, so whether you've got like a Plexi or a Deluxe Reverb or a Fender with a bright switch or a Fender without a bright switch, the idea is that you plug in front of these amps and you can sort of adjust these to get the right response and right tone from it. So for instance, if I switch over from the normal channel to the vibrato channel, what I did was just change the bright switch from mode 1 on the normal channel to mode 2 on the vibrato. I kept this mode over here the same. So that's kind of a cool thing about it as well, is that the workflow of the pedal is quite simple. You know, you've got a set of toggle switches which are there's gonna be an optimum setting essentially where it starts to then think, you know, sound good with your amp is like the idea with it. So that's pretty cool. Got a mid boost here as well, which you can switch on or off. The only negatives that I've really got about this pedal are the price. So there is a version 2, by the way, which is relevant for some of you guys. You know, if you're looking for this sort of thing, I would say it's a different pedal. It's not just like a tube screamer, that sort of thing. Although in some respects it's going to have some of those characteristics. But I would say of any drive channel that I've had, like even on real amps, this is up there with any of them for being sort of the most amp-like thing, which if you're looking for this type of tone, I think is quite an interesting proposition. There are 400 components in here according to some of the guys on someone out there tried to trace it, and I don't know how successful they were, but it was like 400 components. I think one of the most complex pedals out there. So in some ways justifying the high cost in terms of component choice at least. The other negative with it, size wise, is a bit of a beast, but I was kind of just view it, I've taken it out on a gig where with like a deluxe reverb or pro reverb where you just use this as basically like your lead channel, and it's great for that. Then yeah, the other thing I would say is that in terms of power, I think the newer ones might be a bit different for this, but 9 volt 650 milliamps. I think I was just using 9 volt mode there. 12 volts 450, 18 volts 300 milliamps. So it's taking quite a lot of juice out of the wall to get this thing working. But I think a really interesting pedal in some regards, and in terms of things that are massive, bulky, that you could throw through a car window if you wanted to. The feel of this thing is pretty incredible too. If you want something somewhat in this wheelhouse, the closest thing that we found, my buddy Jake and I, to this is the J-Rocket the Dude. It's got some of the same kind of characteristics. Not a transparent drive or anything like that by any means, but sort of like a Dumble channel in a pedal type thing. I think this one takes the cake as the best trade I ever did. So thanks, Jake, for that one. The other best gear decision I ever made was this K-Line Springfield. I've talked about this before, but if you've not seen this part or seen a video on this before, I grabbed this one from the Fretboard Forum for like £850, and it's remained sort of my favourite guitar that I've ever bought, and I'm very glad that I did. It was in considerably better condition when I bought it. Since then, the nitro has kind of shrunk, and it's taken some dings, as well as got played a lot. So it's starting to, you know, have some real character for me, and really be a guitar that I play pretty much every day, and I really like that. And especially when it's a K-Line Springfield, which, you know, for me, getting one of these for £850 I think is, at this stage now, kind of definitely a huge bargain. I think the used price in the UK for these typically would now be around like 1600 to 1800. So I'm very glad that I jumped on this one, for a number of reasons. I think this is my best gear purchase that I've ever made. Purchase. Cheers for stopping by. Leave in the comments if you've got your favourite kind of purchases that you've ever made, and let's have a little bit of a chat in those comments if you want. I'll try and get a chance to read them on this one specifically. I've got a very busy week ahead, so apologies if I don't actually get around to that. I normally, if I'm reading comments, I start getting told off by the wife. Catch you in a bit.